Okay, welcome to you.
Welcome.
Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure how many would be here today with daylight savings time and, the snow, not snow, but anyway. Today is continuing the theme of the power struggle. You're invited to the power struggle. And the theme for today that I have been assigned is the power of fear. And how many of you have ever been afraid? How many of you have never been afraid? Okay, how many of you have ever lied? Okay, well, clearly in the gospel reading for today, if you haven't been to worship yet, you will, well, you've read this gospel before yourselves. The fear of Peter. And I'd really love to know who the other disciple was who got him into the courtyard. The Gospel of John says, Peter was taken to the courtyard of, was it Annas or Caiaphas, I guess, and the disciple who was with him brought him in because the disciple knew the leaders in some way. So I don't know who that is, but anyway, but he got the woman who worked the gates to let Peter in. So he was in there. And in the process of it, that in the Gospels that Jesus had predicted or told Peter that he would deny him 3 times before the cock crew in the morning. And of course that happened. What do you suppose Peter's fear was? What was he afraid of? Pretty obvious, probably, huh?
Being put to death along with Jesus.
Yeah, being arrested, perhaps being put to death if Jesus is that direction it would go for Jesus. And here he was being asked or being suggested that he was one of the disciples, that he knew Jesus, that he traveled with Jesus. And of course, he denied it 3 times. That he even knew the man in one of the Gospels. It's not that one isn't in John, but he denied that he even knew the man, Jesus. And I would imagine that fear would be common to all of us if we were in a similar situation. And it had to do something to Peter's self-esteem. It had to do something to his integrity. And it had to do with something with his commitment and view, just his plain view of himself. He had to have been feeling terrible afterwards. I do want to remind you that after this event, when Jesus appears to the disciples again after the resurrection, the resurrected Christ appears to the disciples on the shore of Lake Galilee, and Peter was going fishing because he couldn't stand this anymore. And Jesus appears to them, and he and Jesus have this conversation in which Jesus asks Peter to feed his sheep, tend my lambs, feed my sheep. There's a kind of forgiveness. Nothing is said about the denial in that conversation, but it is a kind of, okay, it happened, you're forgiven, come be Peter again now. Okay, I want to talk about fear and how powerful it is in our lives today. I think sometimes we deny it, but it really does have power over things we decide and what we do and our behaviors. And I see fear as having, there are probably more, but I see it with 2 elements. One is hopefulness. Fear is a kind of hopefulness, or can give hopefulness. No, not hope. Help is what I meant. Helpfulness. That doesn't really. My handwriting isn't the best, but spelling is great. Yes. Or harmfulness. in our lives, here fear can do real harm to us.
Do you mean helplessness?
No. Fear can be helpful.
Put an L in there.
Where?
Help for the key.
Oh.
Without the L. Take out one of the L's.
Second spell. And the third thing I want to talk, I hope we can talk about today is hope.
Who's the one who's supposed to be?
And I wanted to have a conversation. I'm just not gonna lecture here, because I don't have that much to say. But I want to have a conversation with you about the power of fear in our lives. I put too many L's here, didn't I?
Yeah.
Well,
Take
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Take out the-
We got the idea.
Never mind.
Right.
Oh, I'll be in trouble in public school. Okay, hopefulness, harmfulness, and hope. Helpfulness, I mean. All right. How can fear be helpful in your life? How has it been helpful? I'm gonna tell you a story that I have never told anyone. I hadn't even told Jean this story except for this week. And she went, no. And it's an embarrassing story for me in many ways. And it's about fear being helpful in my life. When I was a senior in high school, a long time ago, I was a very good snare drummer. I was in the percussion section of our school band. I was the section leader. During that, I had won awards the previous years, state awards for drum solo contests, snare drum solo contests, all that stuff. Okay. Big deal. Okay. So that year I was selected to the Minnesota High School Honor Band. And we played at Northrop Auditorium in the spring of 1961. That's a long ago. And I loved it. I loved playing. I played in a dance band as well as in a school band. I just loved it. So then in the fall of 61, I went to Augsburg College, scared to death, talking about fear, that I didn't belong there. But I knew I could play the drums. Okay. And so I went to audition for the Augsburg Concert Band, thinking arrogantly it was a shoo-in, with my background. And I talked with Mayo Savold was the band director, Dr. Mayo Savold, and he had me play a snare drum. And afterward he said, "Oh, you're quite good at that," or something like that. He was complimenting me, of course, but he said, "You don't read music, do you?" This is where it gets embarrassing. I was 18 years old, and I said, "Well, no, I don't." I said, I read rhythms. I can read rhythms, but I don't read notes." I said, "What happened is the school needed drummers in a hurry, and I was in 5th grade. And so they started giving me lessons, and then they pushed me on the snare drum. And when I was in 6th grade, they put me in the high school band for marching. Because they needed drummers. So I said, in that whole process being pushed along, I never learned how to read notes. I never really learned how to read music. And he sat there and he said to me, "Well, you're a really good snare drummer, but," he said, "I really can't put you in the concert band. You don't read music." And so he said, "But I want to put you in the varsity band." I was crushed. I really was crushed. I wasn't sure I belonged to college in the first place, and here he's telling me that the thing I loved the most and that I thought I was the best at, I couldn't do. And so I left his office. I remember this still. I left his office I didn't think this, but I thought something similar. Okay, if I'm not a hotshot drummer anymore, what am I? Who am I? What am I gonna do now? And I didn't handle it very well. I was 18, you know how they say that your brain doesn't develop until you're 26? So so it's dark up here when so I was not thinking very clearly. And I thought, okay. And you know what? I never played drums again for a long, long time.
Hmm.
Big mistake. It's one I have regretted over the years so many times that I just didn't say, okay, I'm going to the varsity band and I'm going to prove myself and I'm going to learn to read notes and I'll be fine. I never said that. I just quit.
Hmm.
Tell your kids not to do that. It was not a good idea. And then I thought, well, what do I do? I didn't even, I was so filled with fear that I was gonna flunk out. I failed. I already failed and I've only been here, 2 weeks or something. And so I thought, I've got it. I can't be successful here. So what I did was I thought, okay, I'm just going to study. I'm going to pay attention to my studies. I'm going to discipline my time so that I have time to study for my courses, which is what I did. And at the spring of that next, my freshman year, I went as a required meeting now with your academic advisor every year. You had to meet with him. So I went in to see, his name was Bruce Budge, Dr. Budge. He was in the business department. He was a professor and my advisor. And he said to me, I see that you haven't indicated any major field yet. And I said, no, I said, I don't know. I'm not sure what I want. And he said to me, well, with a grade point average like this, I think you can do anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
I hung on to that sentence like it was a piece of gold. It helped me a lot. So what I saw in this misspelled word was it was exactly what I needed. And it was exactly what I needed for Dr. Savold to say, I can't put you in a concert band. You don't read music. I needed that truth. And it helped me to focus in other ways. I should have gone to the varsity band. I didn't do that. That's past history. But I became a better student because I was determined I was going to succeed at something. And so I did that instead. So that's the way fear in my life at that age was helpful to me. Okay, now I'm going to ask you, if you have had times in your life where you've been very fearful and it was a helpful thing. Might have started out to be scary as can be, but was it helpful? Did you think of anything? This is going to be a short session. Yeah, Tony?
For those of you who may recall, when Lent a few years ago, I told my story of having PTSD. And that, I hear the loud noise and I'm immediately fearful. What has helped me is seeing my granddaughter with some of those same tendencies, those sensitivities. Mine was based on an event, but I never knew which came first, the chicken or the egg. Was I born sensitive? Well, I can see it in her. So that has actually helped me to turn that fear into a different energy that I can maybe be of help to her.
Okay, wonderful. Steve?
Actually, another, like you, a college story. I was a classic student that in high school I got A's on tests and didn't hand in homework. So, ended up with like
That's
a
classic.
C average. And my father, when I went to college, my father said, I'll pay for a semester. And if you don't do well, you can come home and work at a gas station, you know, your choice. So, with the fear of God.
That's wonderful, yeah. That is. Anybody else? Story of fear that helped you?
This is kind of a political one, but it was after Trump's first term, and then Biden was new president, and I heard that the president was gonna speak. And I had this, you know, custom having
There's a mic.
like kind of a gut reaction of, oh no, what is he gonna say next? And then I realized that it was Biden and not Trump that was gonna speak. I didn't have to worry about what he was gonna say next. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting that maybe I shouldn't be complacent. And that Trump, I was shaking me up, was taking me out of my complacency.
Wasn't on.
You look like you're gonna say something.
I was just going to say that, this side of, fear, we don't think about much. The other side, the frightening stuff is what, you know, we dwell on. There are two sides to this power, and we've came up in the different sides of
Yeah.
different sides of power with service with Carol last week too. You know, what is the helpful, hopeful side? And what are the instances when we've been fearful in really negative aspects? So it's important when we talk about power in these different Sundays to do just what you're doing, I think, because it's very difficult to think about how I've been helped by fear, because my life has been ruled by my fears, and I've struggled my 80-some years to get over that. But it all goes back to, I believe, when I was a child and the car accident and just all this stuff that happens, you know. And it's hard to get.
I think we've had an example with the Metro Surge. That I think the goal of ICE was to create fear so that we'd all cower in our houses.
Yeah.
And they could go about nabbing anybody they wanted
Mm-hmm.
with, and out of that fear, the populace said, I'm not scared of you assholes. And it became a very helpful exercise for the community.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about that in a little bit too, so, yeah. Anybody else? Has a fear ever been helpful to you? Not while you're going through it, but afterwards. For sure, yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to talk too much here, but I find that the things that that identify in myself, that have been my strengths, music or drama, there has been fear there, but I've wanted to go into it, to move, to sing, to be on the stage, to, you know, those are things that I identify with. So those fears didn't hold me back. I just pushed forward to do it.
I had a young woman who was a seminary student. This is some years ago now, quite a while ago. And she was a student at Luther Seminary, and I was her contextual education supervisor. She came to the parish or congregation, and she did work alongside me and, you know, that kind of stuff. She had grown up in a Missouri Synod background church, and they don't have women pastors. So she had this fear that she wanted to be a pastor, but she didn't think she should be a pastor because of her upbringing. She didn't think women should be in the pulpit. Part of my work with these contextual education students was to help them do things they weren't used to doing, but to grow. Okay. So I asked her to preach. She didn't want to preach. I said, you have to preach. You just have to. I said, so she preached and she did just a fine job. You know, and I told her afterwards, I said, you did a wonderful job with that. Why are you so afraid of preaching? She said, well, because every time I'm preparing a sermon, I think I shouldn't be a pastor because that's the way I grew up. Women were supposed to be pastors. I said, well, how did you get to seminary? Well, she said there was something leading me there. She didn't describe what, you know, but she said, and I really wanted to go, and I really do want to be a pastor. I said, you know what? I'm gonna have you preach once a month. She just about wilted. I just thought, you know, but she did it. She did it. Okay, that went on for 2 years. Then, quite a few years later, I had lost track of her. I can't even remember the name anymore, unfortunately. And she evidently went to the Lutheran Synod in Canada. She had a parish in Canada. And she wrote me a letter. I cry every time I think about it, sorry. But she thanked me and thanked me and thanked me for making her preach. She said, you made me preach and you mentored me and you walked along beside me. And she said, now I absolutely love preaching. And I'm going. So she overcame her fear. You know, it pushed her and it pushed her until she could enjoy doing it herself. So that's one story. Any others you hear? Yeah, Susan.
Well, this is kind of a weird one, but growing up in a family that, for me, that was pretty chaotic and alcohol, there was a lot going on. And so when it was time to plan to go to college, I had to do it myself. And I got kind of used to feeling as a survivor kind of less than, but I kept pushing, but then I still always had to struggle with the thing that it was okay for me to feel good. I was used to feeling fear. I was used to feeling like not enough. So for me, the push was, is it okay that I do good? Even if people in my family are not doing good or suffering, is it okay for me to be enough? Is it okay for me to be hopeful, you know?
Yeah.
And that still happens. I mean, I still struggle with that, but it's gotten a lot better. But it's almost sometimes more comfortable to live with fear and to be prepared for the next bad thing that's going to happen. Anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Anybody else? The way fear might have been helpful to you? How about harmful? Fears that are harmful to us. Chris got into it a little bit. I want to share something with you here. This is something I wrote recently, and you want to hand them off? I just pat. Oh, here you have enough. Yeah.
Read our notes.
I don't mean to foist my writing on you, but
Right. Easier if you can see it. Oh, this is good.
no, I wrote this.
Too shy, it's too shy.
Some of this is a mixture of helpfulness and harmfulness, not one or the other necessarily. I'm gonna read this out loud, if you don't mind. Masks move eerily, nearly as one, across and on the streets we think of as home. They are the presence of threat, intimidation, looking for those, they say, are here illegally. An elderly woman walking is stopped, asked to show her ID. I don't have to, she says, with courage. I'm a US citizen. I hoped she might ask for their IDs. But no, that's the purpose of masks, hiddenness. The masks pause, then move on to someone more naive, preferring darker skins and those with accents. Anonymity wears helmets with shields, protective vests and weapons, pistols, clubs, and pepper spray. Anonymity emboldens them to bash in doors, smash car windows, take people away before proof of wrongdoing. One wonders if anonymity would do these brutal things if their masks were down, faces shown, and we could see who they are. One wonders, what is their moral foundation? Do their mothers know what they are doing? What is anonymity without a mask? When it is alone, who is he then? Alone, relaxing or trying, or sleeping or trying? Does anonymity reflect on the cruelty done during its day? Fear settles like fog enveloping our cities and towns, the active tailings of a mountain of masks, anonymity, and indiscriminate arrests. A school principal circles the block before school to see if federal agents are lurking to capture children, dark-skinned, whose parents have accents. 4 have been detained. 50% of his students, or her students, I learned it was a woman actually. 50% of her students stay home, living in a fog of fear. Cafes are lacking employees and businesses down. People cower in homes, afraid to be seen. Congregations of believers cancel worship, fearing raids. And I do not drive downtown for fear of being stopped. I glance at the rearview mirror. Is someone following? Hope, is there? Rapid response teams travel quickly to places where ICE agents may be accosting innocents. Whistles blow and call neighbors to attention. Video phones record the action for the record and to minimize harm. Hope, is there? Thousands of peaceful public protesters walk the sidewalks with signs. ICE out, we the people, love your neighbors. Hope, is there? A federal agent after a day of work is found in his car by a highway patrolman, drunk, his vomit covering him. The result of a moral conscience rising in him? One can hope. Hope, is there? Prayers to God for an end to cruelty. We the people standing.
Nice job.
Yes.
So anyway, I don't know what that does to you when you read it, but it's the harmfulness of what you've been going through is so deep. You know, there are children who have been affected by this, who will live with this for years. There are adults who will live with it for years. The harmfulness of it all, and the fear that still kind of lives in us because of what has been happening and could still happen. So, do you have any stories of harmfulness? The fear that has caused harm to you or your family or anybody?
I think of COVID
Hold it.
and what it did to our children because of our fear of it. And maybe the fear was right, but it did harm to those kids that didn't have their friends around them for 2 years.
Yeah. I shouldn't bring this up maybe, but our daughter, she's an adult. But she was trying to be educated at the University of Minnesota during COVID. And she took all kinds of science classes. Because she wanted to do something in a major with ecological concerns of this. So she had, geology and chemistry classes and I don't know if she had physics, but all of these things anyway. And she had a terrible time in COVID because they couldn't do classes in person, and so they couldn't do laboratory stuff in person. And so she was trying to do these lab exercises at home with a box of materials that she had to buy someplace. I don't know where she got them. And finally she just quit. And then she felt guilty for quitting because she wanted the education, but so that was fear in her, and also just the difficulty of it all through COVID. So that fear was really harmful to her. And I can report though that now she has finished her degree after COVID was over. And so she has graduated kind of mid-year and end of December, first part of January. So that's the good part of it. But that whole timeline in there, just lost time for her. So, yeah, Susan.
Again, kind of in the political area, the leaders who play on fear to really push their agenda, like fear, try to make people think that other people are coming for us, or other people are going to take our money, or other people, you know, it's just like racism, you know, underneath some of that, it's just like playing to some of our worst parts of us or something.
Yeah. Like Chris was saying, some of it's intentional. You know, maybe all of it is intentional.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, when I've talked to people, I said, you know, we in the United States have never really experienced, at least in our lifetimes or even our parents' lifetimes, war in this country, in our own land. It's been elsewhere. And to see what's coming up, and why people cannot make the connection with what happened in Germany in the 1930s and whatnot, and the fear and tactics that they use is very much like the tactics we're seeing now. We've never lived through that, so we don't believe it's going to happen. Of course, the Germans didn't believe what was happening to them either. And we need to learn from that history that it can happen, even in your country. It's happening now.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. It is.
That just reminded me that,
No. Go ahead.
that the fear also has repercussions in our emotions, and often it's anger. And we can't quell that frustration and anger. That's enough for now. Be quiet.
Is what I was going to say, but this whole fear thing, I haven't been able to relate to, but the anger thing I can relate to. What I raised my hand for, as far as harmlessness, fear from harmlessness, or called being harmfulness. To me, Biden's nomination of his attorney general.
Can you hear Rick? Okay.
I think he was a fearful man. If he would have done his job and not worried about so much stuff, we would not have the second Trump presidency. He'd be in jail.
Who was the attorney general with Biden?
Garland. I couldn't say the name, but
Merrick
Merrick Garland. He was a hyper cautious, didn't want to offend anybody, do anything heroic. That prevented him from doing anything heroic. And of course, I see it as most people here do, that second Trump presidency is a total lawless regime. I mean, you can tell everything Trump has done because he's accused others of doing it. He accused Biden of weaponizing the Justice Department. His Justice Department was quaking and never did their job. But then Trump weaponized the Justice Department like, you know, shamelessly. I mean, I'm amazed that. Yeah, that's kind of.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Rick. Yeah, Steve.
You know, we're talking about Peter's denial
Yeah,
as being a fearful response.
yeah.
Was his pulling out a sword and cutting off the servant's ear a fearful response? Was that based on fear as well?
Might have been.
And so I think the fear can go create violence,
Yeah.
push toward violence. It can also push toward pulling back and withdrawing. And so I think there are those two areas.
Yeah.
I think of
Thank you.
what if Peter had said, yeah, I know the guy. And they'd have grabbed him and hung or crucified him as well.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have Peter the Rock.
No, we wouldn't, actually.
So
Yeah.
out of his fear, he himself grew to the point where I guess that maybe flops over to the hope side of your column there. There.
Yeah.
He became an enthusiast,
Yes.
much beyond what he had been when Jesus was alive.
It's hard to imagine the depth of feeling Peter must have had with this whole episode, because here's a man who knew Jesus, who got to know Jesus, who knew that Jesus was probably the best thing that ever happened to him in his life, and the best thing that ever happened to Israel in his life. And here they were trying to put him to death. They were trying to get rid of him because he had upset the apple cart of the whole. I'm not trying to attack Judaism now, please, but in that day, he upset the apple cart of the whole Jewish system of the temple worship and everything. So, or mores, I should say.
Gary, one of the things, when you talk about the harmfulness.
Can you speak up just a little,
Yeah,
Fred?
one of the things about the harmfulness I'm thinking is that it causes inner conflict. It causes tension within yourself. Because you think about it, we talk about this response of him being fearful, right?
Right.
Was he really all that fearful? He went to the courtyard.
Yes, he did.
All the others, except the one that we can't figure out who it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Skedaddled.
Yeah.
And so fear, I think, sometimes creates this conflict with what we believe to be true, like you just said.
Yeah.
And our ability to act on it, our ability to proclaim it, our ability to really live up to it.
Yeah.
Does fear take us down that other path?
Yeah. Thank you for
Because
that.
he showed up.
He showed up. He did show up. Yep. He sure did. Yeah. Yeah, and the others, you're right. The other ones they ran, of course.
So fear sometimes doesn't create total cowardice in us, as opposed to just that conflict and not being able to carry out what is true.
One of the things I think about being very harmful of fear is for politicians who believe something but won't follow through with it because they fear they'll lose their job.
Carl.
And it seems we have
There's
very few politicians that aren't that Their fear of losing their job keeps them from doing what they know is right.
And what they're hired to do.
Yes.
You're making the case for term limits.
Yes.
I was just.
Yeah, it is a case for term limits.
I'm reminded of that. I mean, there's a neighbor down our block in Lionel Lakes. They've had a sign up ever since the election last fall, term limits. They just have it on their one of their trees in their front yard. I mean, it's just like they want that message out there,
Yeah,
not just during the election or campaign season, but
all year
they
long.
really believe in it.
Yeah.
And that isn't only a one-way street, because there are good legislators. There ought to be
Yeah.
a grading system, and I don't know how
Yeah.
to.
It's called the ballot.
It's not called that.
It's not.
Steve.
Well, to complicate things a little bit, I knew a state legislator who had very definite opinions about several years ago about the gay rights amendment and laws that were being considered at the legislature. But he represented a district that was much more conservative leaning in that realm. And the other legislators said, don't dare vote for it. Even though you feel that way, we've got enough votes to pass it. And we want you to stay in office.
Yeah.
We want your voice to continue to be in office.
Yeah.
And he struggled with that.
Mhm.
That was hard.
Yeah.
He was a member of our congregation. I mean, I remember those two talking over the phone for a long time.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting struggle. I know what I would do, but I represent this group of people.
And the confusion of that is, how do you ever really know what everybody else is thinking?
I think my answer would be, you don't.
Exactly. Another example, I think, of fearfulness, which I think we're seeing the back end of it now, is polio, measles, vaccination.
Yeah.
That was out of fear, and people went for it. But we've lived long enough not having that fear that now people are
They're
trying to
complacent.
deny and they're trying to fight vaccinations.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I also think that fear is insidious, because when I'm fearful of something, then I start denigrating myself. I feel negative about myself. And it's all internal. It's not hearing the promises of God that I will be with you. You're with me. Trust me. So then I'll start thinking, okay, Gene, what's wrong? Why don't you believe
I
that?
could follow that up. There's instances in my life where I was the fear of failure,
Yeah,
so you don't try.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've already failed.
Then you go, yeah.
You don't try.
What does naming a fear do?
The naming of it?
Yeah, what does naming a fear do?
Yeah.
Change that. Well, it gets out of your head. At least you know what you're thinking, so you can do something about it.
Yeah.
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 Okay. I just want to make a comment about young pastors and dealing with difficult issues in their churches. I don't know how Steve approached this, or Steve, both Steves, I don't know, or John, but I remember being a young pastor in my first parish, and I knew there were congregants in my parish who were totally disagree with me politically. How do you deal with that from the pulpit or from in teaching a class and all of that kind of stuff? I was silent a lot. And I felt guilty for it. afterwards. So finally, I started having to say, okay, this is what I think. I may be right, I may be wrong, but I want to hear what you think too. So we could engage in a conversation about it. So anyway, that's not easy because pastors are afraid of losing their jobs too. That's why I appreciate Pastor Steve. Now I'm going to do the, I mean, like this morning with talking about US aid and that kind of thing. Very important. A lot of pastors wouldn't do that. In my opinion, parish pastors wouldn't do that. I think it's really helpful to get it out there and okay, so now we can talk about it.
I
Okay.
think that's been a cultural shift though, because when Stephen was going to seminary, I think that they addressed the idea of you don't use the pulpit politically.
Yeah,
And so I think there's been a cultural shift over time.
yeah, you're probably right, actually. You're probably right. So,
I saw something on one of the internet things. Some preacher was accused of preaching politics from the pulpit.
yeah.
He says, I'm not preaching politics, I'm preaching morality.
There you go.
Right. We're preaching Jesus. I mean, we say Jesus wasn't political, and there's some
Yeah.
theologians say Jesus was very political.
I think he was too.
So,
How about, we need to move to hope. I am running out of time. What gives hope in all this? When you're afraid, when there's fear in the world and fear in your life, what gives you hope?
God's love,
Say it again.
God's love.
God's love. Okay. Yep.
Moving through the fear.
Okay. How do you do that?
You face it and do what you can to move beyond it.
Okay.
How do the people in Gaza,
What?
how do the people living in Gaza,
They live in fear all the time. Yeah.
what's their hope?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm just gonna say that supportive others, when you can't get through it yourself, if you can rely on others,
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah, it does help. Really? Yeah, David?
I look at Peter and how he was at the transfiguration, he had all these events and yet he still failed. So when I fail, I realize, well, okay, maybe, I can do better, but I don't feel maybe quite as bad when he failed, because you see these other people who were right there with Jesus failing.
You're feeling too.
So a little hope there that, okay, well, keep going.
Yeah. Yep. When this metro surge is going, it's still kind of going on a little bit, but not as many federal agents, I guess, but what gave me hope during that was all the peaceful demonstrations. I mean, literally thousands of people in Minneapolis and St. Paul who showed up and walked the sidewalks or the streets or whatever with these placards and they were peaceful. I got a phone call from because I had cautioned our grandson who lives in the North Loop in a apartment with his partner Isabel, and I cautioned him. I said, I hope you just be careful, because I was worried, be careful, because he's darker skinned, he's African American. And I said, be careful. If you see anybody that looks like an ICE agent, just stay away from them if you can. So and Isabel were out there walking, and I didn't know this. And he called me on the phone and he showed a video on his phone of all the people, thousands and thousands of people. It just gave me a great deal of hope. And the other thing that gave me hope was this event it was actually at Central Lutheran. I can't remember what they call it. They were singing hymns and Christian songs and all of this kind of stuff. That just gave me a great deal of hope to see that happen. Yeah,
Another thing was how much food was dropped off in the sanctuary for puppies and kitties and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just the hope that you just, as much as the fear is, just finding how you can make a difference. And I'm kind of thinking, like you mentioned, like the singing thing. I just remember some of us from Prince of Peace, we're at that one over at House of Hope. That was, the singing, and I mean, the whole sanctuary was packed. There was there were people standing room only in the room. We were lucky, we got a seat in the overflow, but I had never been, I don't think I had ever felt to be as proud of as being a Minnesotan.
Wow.
Most of the songs were not Christian songs, they were more, I would say, just as political songs.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that afternoon I ever felt more proud to be that, and like Bishop Lau, she had said at the conference assemblies in her sermon a few weeks ago at Christ the King in New Brighton, how she had been over in Slovenia recently, and the people over there, all they were asking is, what's going on there? We're watching, the world was watching us here in Minnesota.
No. It's good.
I think too with the church, the Hispanic church that meets here in the afternoon,
Right.
now that they're back.
Yeah.
We're seeing through their reactions of what hope this church has given them during this. Especially, I mean, Fred was here the first week that they were back, and they're just so grateful and so encouraged that the church has been supportive of them.
Thank you. Can I just close with a prayer? It's what? 10:30? She said, no. No, she didn't.
She's disagreeing with you here.
I learned this when I was taking CPE. Never say, may I pray, because you never know what's the I might say no. And people have said no to me. But dear Lord, you have promised that you are with us always to the close of the age. We count on your presence. We count on your grace. We count on you to give us courage as well as hope. We count on you to tell us that we count, we matter, and that all people matter. Bless this congregation and these people gathered here with your goodness and your hope-giving presence. Thank you in Jesus' name, amen. When you're talking about Jesus in a prayer, do you still say in Jesus' name at the end of it? Taking care of it. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.